and hopefully a nice, fun weekend for everybody planned. Tomorrow is a busy, busy day for us because it's Mastery. And so congratulations to a bunch of people that are brand spanking new for Mastery, making it happen. So it's lots of exciting times. And well, I thought today is supposed to be, on Friday, it's supposed to be story time, but I thought I would kind of go through about last year and a half, personally, what's been going on my end in terms of the $1 million challenge. I've done a $1 million challenge for some of you that are new about a year and a half ago, right? And the idea was last year. My goal was to make $1 million with wholesales. And I'll kind of show you exactly what happened. And there's about 36, 38 properties that are involved in that whole challenge. And when I started, the thought process behind that was, could I make $1 million, right? Just doing wholesales in 1 year. And I want to tell you what the idea was when I started. I want to tell you the amount of money that I spent. And then in reality, with the list of properties, exactly what has happened. So I think this should be fun. And if you are a real estate investor and you don't go through these frustrating periods, there's something wrong with you because you don't have a business that is growing. Anytime you have a business that's growing, guess what's going to happen? There's going to be frustration. There's going to be anguish. There's going to be a lot of lot of things up and down. And hopefully in the long run, it works out. That's really what the hope is. But there's going to be frustration. If you're not frustrated, you're not growing, because staying the same is where you feel, okay, I'm comfortable. So, that's kind of what it is. So having said that, so what happened was not last November before, I had come up with this idea that, hey, can I make $1 million with wholesales, right? And so the thought process kind of started over there, was the $1 million challenge. And I was pretty public about it. And whenever I do something, I kind of go all the way. Probably not the best idea sometimes, but at least financially I could afford it. So here's what I did. What I did was I was doing about $500 in mailings every single month. I bumped that up to about $2,500 every single month, because I'd found a lot of good properties, and we'll talk about that. And number two, what I also did was I decided, okay, I'm going to go on TV. So I was spending about $20,000 on cable TV, basically $22,000 a month on cable TV, buying a bunch of ads with, hey, we buy houses, sort of an ad. Some of you guys might have seen it. Then where else could we have done, right? We did some cold calling to people that are probates, expireds, canceled listings, people who are out-of-town owners, absentee owners, right? So I got a VA to do a bunch of that. So that's basically marketing avenue number 3. And number 4 was buying leads online, like care.com, this, that, whatever. So all the properties that I'm going to talk about, and then the MLS, obviously, right? MLS, auction.com, Xhome, all those type of websites. And also auction properties from auction, right? So these were kind of all the places that these properties come from. Now, it's been a year and a half. You can say today. So November, I started. So whenever you start something and the results that you see, there's going to be a 60-day, 90-day lag time between when you start something versus when you start seeing the results, meaning some of the properties that come in. And then you're going to see basically over the next 3, 4, 5 months, things are going to start happening, right? So here's kind of what happened. One of the first properties that I found was a property in Elk Grove Village that I basically ended up wholesaling that particular property to an agent across the street. I bought it for, I think it was $190 or something like that, Elk Grove Village, wholesale to the agent for about something, actually $160 was my buy price. I think I wholesaled it about $120,000 profit, right? So far, I'm way ahead. But now, mind you, every single month for the first month and a half, for the first 3, 4, 5, 6 months, I'm burning first $20,000 a month, then $40,000 a month, right? So I'm kind of burning a lot of cash every single month. I got Matthew Ibarra from Mastery to come on board, right? Harry came on board to manage some other things, right? So I was kind of upping my expense structure, and I'm basically finding properties, but every property I find, instead of wanting to wholesale, my goal was wanting to wholesale, I get a little bit greedy. right? I start keeping the properties, which is, so I had the Elk Grove property. It was just too good to kind of pass up, because the agent across the street, she's like, well, Andrew, I know you. She saw me pull up and she's like, oh, Andrew, I know you. I know what you're going to do. You're going to do a cheap rehab and try to basically flip the property. I'm like, actually, I'm going to keep the property. And she's like, well, that's kind of stupid. I would go ahead and rehab the property. So I'm like, ma'am, let me ask you a question. What would you pay for the property? Right? And she's like, well, I would pay, I don't remember what the number was, 260, 270, whatever she said. And that was an obnoxious price to buy as a flip. So I'm like, well, would you like to buy the property? She's like, of course, I can show you how to do the rehab. So I'm like, okay, great. So I wholesale the property, I close, and I do double close on it, basically right back to back. So it was actually 24 hours later, because she didn't have her funds ready. 24 hours later, I wholesale the property to her. I make $120,000. Now only about 880,000 more to go. So because I had 120,000 done. Second property, which was one of the properties that I found, was a property up in Northbrook, beautiful townhouse. And I couldn't keep that one for a rental. So I did a simple rehab on it, flipped it, right? So that was actually a flip, made about $55,000. Now, at the same time, my burn rate on the amount of money is going up every single month. So in this experiment from November, December, January, February, March, April, May, June, July, sometime maybe in about 6 or 7 months, here's what I ended up doing. I ended up spending close to, I would say about 148,000, 150,000, somewhere around that kind of money in a period of about 6, 7 months. Now, the problem was this. So in that time, and you tell me if this is good or not. So I found a property in Joliet, which had a margin of about 140,000. Another one in Chicago that I paid $90,000 for a condo, 3-bedroom, 1-bath condo, a block from the lake, right over there in Gold Coast. So that had a margin of another 150,000, meaning after rehab. I kept that property. Joliet property, I didn't want to sell, I kept it. There's another Chicago property by Midway, I didn't want to sell that one, I kept that one. Linwood was a property I bought at auction, I kept that one. Schaumburg, Clifton, that's a property, I kept that one. Melrose Park, I found another property, I kept that one, right? The Broadview, then there's another one in Chicago, then there's another one in Glenwood, then another one in Roselle, another one in Streamwood, another one in Lombard, another one in Barrington, another one in Des Plaines, Schaumburg, and Morton Grove. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, right? 19 plus 2. 2 I sold, so that puts you at 21. Now, all these properties, they're just too good, right? And I kept keeping them. Now, somebody may look at it and go, oh my God, Andrew, this is great. This is home run, right? The problem with this situation is this. I had spent about $148,000. I had done 2 wholesales, one wholesale and 1 flip. And by the time you look at the cost, right, I broke barely even. Maybe I made a little bit more money on the flip. So about 120 on the wholesale, another 50, 60,000 bucks on that flip. So, right, and I've spent 150,000. That's just marketing expense, mind you. That doesn't include the cost, basically, of having Matthew in the office, having Harry in the office, right? What I'm trying to say today is this. Sometimes for you to basically, like, it's like sitting in front of a fire. You have a fireplace, and you're like, okay, give me warmth. What you have to do is you have to put the wood in first, get the fire stoked, get it up and running before you're going to get warmth from it. Right? And real estate is kind of that way. Now, not only that, but if you look at the properties that are in process right now, right here. So this is the list that is in process under construction. And hey, man, can you the thing a little bit, right? So this one is a wholesale one that I got. So this is Elgin. This is Elmwood Park. This is Westchester. This is Burbank, this is Lindenhurst, this is Glen Ellen, this is Wheaton, Romeoville, Schaumburg, Westchester, Wonder Lake, Wheeling, Bellwood, and then there's 2 more, St. Charles and Des Plaines, right? So it's somewhere around 33, 34 properties, right? Now, It's been, if you think about it, since November before till today, right? And then there's more coming up, obviously, right? About 32, 34 properties, somewhere in that ballpark, right? And my point being is this, that today, if you look at it, right, bunch of them have gone to Airbnb. So there'll be about 21 Airbnbs by the time this is all said and done. So those 21 Airbnbs, besides all the properties I kept for rentals, every single one of them on an average is making somewhere around 2,000 a month. So 21 Airbnbs that are making about 2,000 a month, that's basically, you do the math, somewhere around, $42,000, $44,000 every single month, right? And a lot of times when I looked at it last year, I was frustrated with myself because I didn't want to sell a property because it was just too good. The margins were too good for a regular rental, so I didn't want to sell it. I was frustrated because I was not making money because I wasn't doing any wholesale. And yet I had made this claim, I'm going to make $1 million doing wholesales, right? Now, could I have sold any of those properties? Of course, I could have sold those properties. And if I had just put them right back on the market and just dumped them, would I end up making about $1 million? Yes, I would have ended up making $1 million. But what I realized throughout the process was, why am I doing wholesales? What's the reason for it? Well, publicly, it would look great that if I said, okay, here's the 15 properties I wholesaled, here's the amount of money I made, I bought it for this, sold it for this, boom, right? Am I not a genius? But you know what the bigger genius is this, that fortunately I had the fortitude and the wherewithal to be able to keep the properties, because guess what it does? Literally by the time all the 30, 35 properties are settled, right? Meaning settled, meaning the rehab is done. And a bunch of them, all these on this board are still under rehab. The ones on that board are done and they're going online, right? It's taken this long. It's taken about a year, almost year and 3 months. So if you really look at it, like, Andrew, man, what is wrong with you? But guys, listen, think about this. 21 make about close to about 2,000 a piece. So about 42, 43,000 bucks. Some of them make more, but about 42, 43. You realize by the time I get to almost 40 properties, that'll be about 80,000, which I'll get to by the end of this year, right? Because most of them have gone towards Airbnb. Some of them have gone towards rental properties. With 40 properties, that'll end up being, I already have the properties. It's just a matter of getting them rehabbed and getting them online. That'll end up being almost 80,000 a month. So if you take 12, right? If you take 12 times 8, that puts you at, so 8 times 12 is 96. What does that mean? That's $960,000. $960,000 in net revenue, in net cash flow every single year. And if you take the time horizon in that, it's about 2 years to go from, and this doesn't count obviously any of the cash flow I have with all the other properties that I own. This is just properties that the idea started with that, hey, can I make $1 million just doing wholesales? And then as I'm going through this, I'm like, these properties are too good. I'm not going to sell these properties. I'm going to keep them because, yes, I have to go through a lot of pain to get them rehabbed, to get them all done, all settled in. And I'm not seeing the results today, which I would love to be able to claim that, hey, I made a bold claim, and now it's going to look like I fell flat on my face, right? Yet, last year, if you had looked at my numbers, you'd be laughing. Guess what? If you look at the numbers now, or if you look at the numbers end of the year especially, I'll be laughing all the way to the bank, because that literally means $80,000 to $85,000 a month, every single month, right? And instead of making about $1 million, which I would have to pay that kind of tax on just from wholesales, it is going to end up being $1 million because of having a little bit of patience and because of saying no to instant gratification and saying, no, I'm going to keep the properties either for long-term rentals, or I'm going to keep the properties and convert them to either midterm or Airbnbs, right? Short-term or midterm rentals. What my point is this, sometimes what is obvious, what is right in front of you, is not the best choice for you, because all of these properties I get to keep forever, right? And a lot of times people ask me all the time, they're like, well, Andrew, but why don't you do multifamily, right? Guys, I challenge you this. I challenge you. Show me one person that you know personally that is willing to compare bank accounts when it comes to net cash flow. Not you buy a 100-unit building with 10 people. I'm talking about you, meaning if you buy a 100-unit building with 10 people, what is your personal net cash flow? You're not going to find very many people that will have that kind of personal net cash flow or that kind of net wealth. For you to really scale, for you to make a lot of money, and we're in a very unique opportunity today, right? If you look at what is going on with midterm rental market, what is going on with the Airbnb market today, right? We are very, very fortunate, very, very blessed to be in a market which is a very boring market. If you look at Florida, the Airbnbs are not doing well, right? We're building in Mastery close to about 300 properties in Florida, right? That market is not as good as a boring market like Chicago. The boring midterm rentals, Airbnbs. I mean, if I could have it my way, every single property that I have, I would convert it to a midterm rental market, right? It's not there yet. We're gradually kind of converting it. In fact, all the other properties, a couple hundred other properties that I own, those we're gradually bringing it on also, depending on which suburb they're in, depending on what town they're in, because the restrictions are less. And I'm not saying that you should do this, but the reason I wanted to bring it up was that my last year's frustration, my biggest frustration was, and I ended up going to this particular one mastermind, and it's supposed to be the top wholesalers in the country and blah, 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 that sort of thing, right? And there are people literally doing 2 million, 3 million gross wholesales, right? They have 25 people on staff. They have 2-3 partners, and they're running this massive wholesale operation. And if you look at their numbers, 3.6 million, 3.2 million, 2.8 million gross earned from doing wholesales. Yet, you know what they were taking home? 180,000, 200,000 they're taking home. I mean, it's pennies, right? That's not even you're operating on a 5 or 7% margin. I won't get out of bed on a rental property. I mean, on a rental property, I will not get out of bed if it's not a 50% cash on cash return, right? Anything, like if it's a 40% cash on cash return, I mean, shame on me, right? I screwed up somewhere. And what I mean by that is this, that just because the profit number looks bigger, in the long run, these boring properties that are long-term rentals, that are midterm rentals, and that are Airbnbs, right? And we have every single address that we have done, right? That I've done personally, that I own today. And my point being is sometimes whatever seems the most straightforward is not necessarily what is good for you in the long term. And it certainly does not build net worth, and it does not build cash flow. Right. And I wanted to bring this up because a lot of times this is something that I take for granted every single day, making offers. I mean, last few days, if you've seen me, I've been out making offers on more and more and more properties. It took me 22 offers to get 5 properties under contract and get them to closing. 22 offers, right? So if you're frustrated, if you're looking at the market, oh my God, Andrew, there are properties that are not out there. Guys, I promise you, properties are out there. The question is, are you looking? Are you doing the homework, and are you willing to put the time in? See, real estate is a game of chess. In chess, the most obvious move is not the best move. Here's the difference. A novice in chess thinks 1 move ahead. Somebody who maybe knows to play a little bit, maybe thinks 2 moves ahead, right? Somebody who may be considered good thinks 3 moves ahead. See, a grandmaster is thinking about the end game as they start the game. That's the difference. That's the level of play that you have to think about. In real estate, if you're going to invest, right, and if your goal truly is to build wealth, you have to think about how am I going to get to the end game? And then the moves that you make from the beginning, that is going to be a little bit different than the most obvious move. It's like, oh my God, I can sell the property and make $50,000. Now, sometimes you have to do that because that's what I had to do early on. But in the long run, the real money, the real secret to real estate is building long-term wealth and keeping properties for a long period of time, whether you do Airbnbs, whether you do midterms, or whether you do a long-term rental, a year or 2 or 3 at a time. It really doesn't matter. But the money, the real money, is in long-term holding properties, and never, 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 never selling them if you don't absolutely have to. Refinance them, have fun with the money, but do not sell the properties. This is Andrew Holmes. This is your Chicago's real estate home and your real estate resource center. If you have any friends, if you have any family, and if you have any colleagues, please refer them to Burr Cashflow Investors. We love to have a lot of people join. This is a conversation that we want to keep going. We'll see you back on Monday. Talk to you then.